All right, what's up, everybody? My name is Sam. Welcome to Chalice and Chains. I am excited because I haven't done a video like this in a while. It's been about 4 years, I think, since I put RPG content up on the channel. So today I wanted to do some GM commentary on the game of Dark Age of Man that I ran. And I will say it has been a really excellent and exciting entry into the type of gaming that I've always been wanting to do, I've always been looking for, and it's something that I think I've finally found the perfect system for it. And so if you're not familiar, obviously Dark Age of Man is a pretty light rules fantasy role-playing game created by Jason Graham and Del Branham. It is available on Drivethrurpg as pay what you want, and I will put a link to that in the description below so you can get that. And I was fortunate enough to play in a 4-session chronicle with Jason at the helm a few months ago, and it was fantastic. It was wonderful, and the system was designed really well to facilitate that sort of live in the moment improvisational role playing where you create the fiction and the story that's being told together. And what was really interesting was, of course, I had played it, I had really enjoyed it, but I was a little bit hesitant to run it because I had never run anything with this type of structure before. So what I wanted to talk about today was a little bit responding to Jason's video where he did kind of a player recap and reflections. So I'll put that up on the screen now. I'll link to this video as well so you can take a look at that. But this is Jason talking on YouTube about the game. You can see Dark Age of Man Chronicles Session 1, Player Recap and Reflections. He's really, really good at discussing how he feels and what he really enjoys about the game. But what I wanted to really talk about beyond just that was something that Del, who was the other player in the game, asked at the end where we had our banter. And both the game and the banter are up on Roleplay Cafe Plus. I will link, of course, to both of those in the description down below, so you can check that out. And you should go watch them because they are fun. But he asked me essentially what were some stumbling blocks or barriers to entry for people to run this game. Because it's one of those things where it's a very rules-light system. It's very easy to play, and it's very easy to get into if, in my opinion, you meet a certain set of conditions. And so I think what he has found is that there were people who were in the game who played it and had a great time, who have been game masters for other role-playing game systems, but haven't been for this one. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about possible barriers of entry today and maybe how you can overcome them. So let me talk about this. So possible barriers of entry, I think one of the main ones is a lack of structure, right? So if you have D&D brain, it can be really difficult to run a game where you're asked to be a naive narrator and rely on just a couple of sentences and some random seed charts that the game tells you to create to help you sort of form that fiction together with your players. In traditional D&D and most traditional role-playing games for that matter, it's very structured, right? Both in how the game is played and generally how adventures or sessions are created, right? So, whether that be a published module or even just instructions in the Game Master section or the Dungeon Master section about how to set up encounters, right? There's a lot of structure. And if that's what you've been used to, especially for a long time, if you've done that 20, 30 years, right, then it can be very difficult to come into a system like this where it's asking you to not have everything planned out, not have everything scripted out, and to trust that you and your players will work together to figure out what's going to happen. As a game master, traditionally, like, you already know where the path is going to lead, right? In a traditional RPG, if the players go left, but you expect them to go right, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, both paths are going to converge back to the pre-planned, climax of the adventure, or they'll put you back on the rails at some point, because I don't care how many people you talk to, how many GMs that say, I never railroad my players. You do. In a traditional system, you do, because you have to. You write a story, or you write an adventure, and it has an outline, and it has a scripted outcome. Now, the scripted outcome isn't always, known as to how it's going to turn out, but it is scripted in the sense that the GM knows that eventually the players will encounter whatever, this bad guy, this location, this encounter, whatever. He knows, or she knows, that there is going to be a specific encounter. So it is structured in that way. And that's not what Dark Age of Man asks the GM to do, right? It asks you to be a presenter, but you have to remain naive and present the world as it exists in real time, right? So you experience it along with the players. And that can be a little bit difficult, because if you are used to that type of control and knowing where the adventure is going to go, knowing how you can set up encounters and you have things kind of planned out, to give up that control can be very difficult. So I feel like that is the first and probably the biggest barrier to entry, is the lack of structure for the GM. I would say the second barrier to entry, and I'm doing these in the order that I believe are the most influential. So the second most influential reason that might cause someone to not want to run this system is that you kind of have a lack of trust in your players, or you know that your players are not really well equipped to take on that heavily collective narrative position, right? Some players really just enjoy the game aspect of role-playing games, right? They like being able to roll the dice and use the abilities on their character sheet and, do the math required and figure out how to mechanically overcome whatever challenges are put in front of them. And if you ask them to role-play, they might do it a little bit, or they might not. They might be perfectly happy to just be like, I'm going to just smash things with my axe, right? Or you may have the player who might in time be able to do role play, but maybe they're a wallflower, they're a little bit more hesitant, etc. And so those are the types of players that are just not going to work well in this system, in Dark Age of Man. Jason and Del may disagree, but I think we will agree that it is really important that if you want to try this system, that you're the kind of player or presenter or both that really enjoys telling stories more than rolling dice. Okay? Because that's what it's about. It's about creating this fiction together and getting to experience it together. And the beautiful part about being the presenter is that you're right there along with the players. You only have a little bit of information to help you inform both yourself and the players as to what's going on in the world. And then I think the last barrier of entry is really being uninterested in the baked-in setting, which is Dark Ages England, quasi-historical. It is fantasy England. It does allow for things like magic and magical creatures and such, but I would say it's more low fantasy, low magic than anything else. It is a pseudo-historical Dark Ages Britain, right? In the time of the Saxons and the Anglos and the Vikings invading and raiding, and all of the drama that goes on, right? I mean, Jason has said it is heavily influenced by the Last Kingdom the Netflix series and the series of books by Bernard Cornwell. Phenomenal, by the way. If you haven't watched it, it's really good. But it's a great way to understand how the setting can present itself and how the types of situations that you can create in this game. So, you know, if you really like the high fantasy with the wizard's tower and the, you know, the dragons flying everywhere, and you have, you know, orcs and zombies and all these things, like, this may look unappealing to you at first. Now, I will say I do believe that this system can handle that type of setting. In fact, I believe that the rules themselves can work in any setting without the need for Dark Ages England. It's just, this happens to be what Jason enjoys the most, and it also happens to be what I enjoy the most, which is why when I saw this this game system, I was like, this is perfect. But it is designed more around a group of players telling their individual stories, really, but as a group, right? But it is not for, you know, the superhero. It's not for the, you know, I want to crack skulls and that's it. Like, that's not really who it's designed for. And so, you know, if you don't like the idea of at least trying a game or a series of games in a sort of Dark Ages England, maybe introducing some fantasy elements into it, then that could be the third sort of barrier of entry for you. But with all that said, I would say that if you are a fan of role-playing games where the role play takes first, where it takes, you know, center stage is the priority, and the rules are there to sort of help facilitate the role play, check out this system. I'll also say, if you are the kind of game master who's really looking to have that immersive experience like your players do, where they don't really know what's going to happen, right? They are reacting to the things that the game master would say. Well, this system is designed to do exactly that. So this video is in the barriers to entry. That was expanding a little bit more on the previous video on my channel, which was an excerpt from our post-game banter. I just want to end this by saying I really encourage anybody who enjoys this type of role-playing, that more conversational, cooperative type of role-play where you create a fiction together, check out this game. It's really good. Take care, everybody.